Hello and welcome to Curiosity Taught the Cat. I'm Jack.
I'm Julia.
And what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about the Mexican Tailless Whip Scorpion.
And before I start the slideshow, I want to give a disclaimer. If you're watching this in video format, these things are creepy looking. If you have any sort of arachnophobia, any kind of insect fear, I probably don't recommend watching this. Probably just listen to this one because they are creepy looking, and these pictures are close-up pictures, and you might get a little squeamish. So this is your disclaimer. This is your notice. If you're listening, don't worry about it. If you don't think you can handle looking at them, don't look at them. But so we can go ahead and get started. You want to start with basic name stuff?
Yeah, so like I said, we were talking about the Mexican Tailless Whip Scorpion, and it has a couple of nicknames, including the cave spider, as well as the guaba, and it's found in North and Central South America, and like its nickname, it is found in different caves. It's also found in leaves and under leaves and rocks in the jungles of South America, but it is predominantly found in the caves in that area.
Yep. And then as for color, as you can see with some pictures that we got going, they got pretty like neutral colors. So like dark browns, blacks. They may lighten up in color, like you see here, like a very light brown, tan kind of looking color. But overall, very neutral colors. You won't see anything crazy kind of colors on these kind of creatures. They want to blend in, because we'll get into that with like the hunting and the eating and whatnot. But they're gonna want to blend in with their environments.
And then just getting into the actual size of them, the size does range because there are actually a couple different species of these scorpions, but they can range anywhere from about 19 to 25 inches, and that includes its legs, which you can see they do have very long, thin legs, so that helps with how big they are in general. And like other kind of species similar to it, the females are larger than the males. And we, like I see this a lot, and even though it is a scorpion, we see this a lot with like spiders and things like that. But it really just depends on the species of the size of the thing. And even the front legs on it, the little pincers, those themselves can reach almost 3 feet in length. So it really just depends on the species to determine what size these animals actually are.
Yeah, and one thing, because I just want to make sure to touch on, so the name is the Mexican Tailless Whip Scorpion. Another name for it is called whip spider as well. Not whip scorpion. So there's Tailless Whip Scorpion, and then there's whip scorpion. Whip scorpions are like actual scorpions. This is a tailless whip scorpion or a whip spider. And it's called both those things because, as you can tell, it's very scorpion-like looking, a very spider-looking. And the tailless whip scorpion is an arachnid. It is in the same family as these other creatures, but it is not a spider and it is not a scorpion. Actually, its closest relative would be more almost like a crab. That would be its closest relative. But because of the way it looks, it's more associated with spiders and scorpions, and the name and the nicknames that it may have. And then going into how it looks, because I kind of touched on that there with the scorpion and spider-like features. So it's got a very flat body. You can't really tell with some of these pictures, but if you were looking at it straight on, it's pretty flat, honestly. It has 10 legs, and its first 2 legs that aren't the pedipalps. And real quick, pedipalps are the pincers. Arms with pincers are called pedipalps. So it has 10 legs, not including the pedipalps. Its front 2 legs are very long, and they're very thin and whip-like. And they actually use those to like guide and look around. They're kind of surveying their environment, touching things, that sort of stuff. And then the pedipalps, as I said, the pincer-bearing front arms, they are spiny and very powerful, and they are what they use to grab things, whatnot, whatever it may be. And as I mentioned, it looks like the cross between spider, scorpion, and crab. Broad, flat body, segmented abdomen, and then a series of flexible appendages that sweep the ground as it moves.
And then just some other physical characteristics that it has. It does have 8 eyes on the top of its head, which you might not be able to see in any of these photos because they are very, very tiny. But they do have 8 eyes on the top of their head. And he already mentioned their pincers that they use to feel the ground. They use them almost as like a sensory thing. They can feel the ground in front of them to detect different prey or predators or anything along its path as it's going through these caves, because it's often very dark in these caves. So this is kind of its eyes and ears, are these front pincers that they use to detect the world around them.
Yeah, and so the legs that they have, or the actual front legs that have the sensory stuff on them, they're called antenniform legs because they kind of act like antenna. They have these stubby little hairs on them that can help them see, hear, feel, and taste what is on the path in front of them. And they have a very interesting walk. They kind of walk sideways like a crab. They're capable of moving forward and backward as creatures like this would, but their most common way of locomotion is sideways like a crab.
And then just jumping into its diet and what it eats. It is an insectivore, so it'll eat things like flies, crickets, cockroaches, grasshoppers, waxworms, and sometimes even the larger species can take down small like frogs or lizards and things like that. And it does have a couple of different ways that it actually hunts. It is a nocturnal animal, so it hunts at night. So in these caves, it will pretty much hide and wait for one of these insects to walk by. And one of the things that it will do is it will wait for the insect to come in front of it, and it will kind of jump out very fast and pierce it with its pincer, pretty much stunning it, killing it instantly in order to eat it. And another one is to kind of slowly feel the ground in front of where this insect is, and then it does this in like a non-threatening way to the insect, and the insect is too confused, but by the time that the Tailless Whip Scorpion actually grabs it, it's too late for these insects.
And one of the reasons it's called the Tailless Whip Scorpion is because of how fast these pincers move. When it goes to grab its prey or skewer its prey, it is moving extremely fast, and it kind of whips out its pincer to grab hold of them. And pretty much guarantee if something gets grabbed by these pincers, it is not escaping. They are very powerful, and they have a lot of spines on them where nothing is getting away from them.
And then just getting into the predators that it has, you can think of like with any kind of spiders, the things like bats, lizards, reptiles, other insect eaters. These are all the kind of things that actually feed on them. But they are most vulnerable when they are young. They have a very bright colors when they're young, and their exoskeleton hasn't formed completely. So that is when they're at their most vulnerable to these predators.
Yep. And then getting into the mating portion of the Tailless Whip Scorpion. So they actually do have a courtship ritual, and it is very, how do I put it? It's kind of tame almost compared to how other arachnids may mate. So a male and female Tailless Whip Scorpion will feel each other out with their antenniform legs and kind of stroke each other's bodies and perform these little dances together. And this can take several hours for them to do this little courtship thing. So they do not rush this process at all. And so, like I said, it can take hours before they move on to the next step. When it's time to actually breed, the male will lay spermatophores on the ground. So there actually is no like physical copulation going on. He will lay the spermatophores on the ground, and he will guide the female to pick them up. So they don't need any physical contact, and then she will fertilize the eggs as she sees fit.
And then after doing this process, the female will produce the eggs that she will actually carry on her back until it is time to hatch. And then after these newborns actually do hatch, like I said, they're very vulnerable. They're bright white in color. Their sensories really haven't developed yet. So the first part of their life, they're actually spent on their mother's back, just kind of following her wherever she goes. And they only drop off when it's their first time to molt. So like other arachnids, they do molt multiple times throughout their lives. And especially in their younger stages as they're growing, they will molt dozens of times. And even into their adult life stages, unlike a lot of other species, they will still molt in their adult stages. And then as they do this, their colors will change to their darker colors, and their exoskeleton will start to form. But that's really what it's like growing up for the whip scorpion in these caves.
Yeah, and I think a really good way to describe them, looking at pictures of them, is they almost look like jellies. They don't look real. They almost look like gummies. They look like little gummy bugs. They look very soft and squishy compared to the adult counterparts. And then as for the lifespan of these creatures, they actually have a fairly long lifespan. So they can survive anywhere from 5 to 15 years in captivity. Their lifespan in the wild is unknown. Just be like it's a wild insect, so it is hard to definitively nail down their exact lifespan in the wild. But it's obviously most likely very considerably less than ones that are raised in captivity.
And then just getting into their behavior, unlike a lot of other species similar to them, they're actually very tame creatures. They aren't very hostile with others. They will all kind of eat and roam in the same area in the caves. Occasionally, they do have dominance battles. It's usually between males of the species. And oftentimes, these dominant battles actually leave one of them dead, and sometimes they will actually feast on the one that they killed. But other than that, like I said, they're very docile creatures. They're actually very docile pets as well, which is a kind of like a little fun fact that we have, is they're very easy pets. Like someone said that they can crawl all over you and they won't do anything to you. They are very tame creatures for how mean and scary they look.
Yeah, and so I mentioned that their main way of predation is their pincers. They will not really pinch humans. They're really only pinching for food. They're not pinching as a self-defense sort of thing unless you get in these dominance battles. And then as for like fangs or teeth or mouth, they don't have any of that. So they do not bite either. The way they eat their food is by tearing it up with their pincers and then as a way of like chewing it, and then they swallow it. So there's no real harm to a human when it comes to these tailless whip scorpions. That does not mean you should be handling wild ones. If you find a wild one, do not mess with it. But people that have these as pets, you will see these often, and it can be creepy if you're not used to that sort of thing, but they will crawl all over and there is no problem. They have no problem with any of that.
And then just getting into their population size, the whip scorpions, they aren't endangered as a whole. I mentioned there are multiple different species, so there are some species that are more vulnerable than other ones. Like one species is actually listed as vulnerable. There's also several species that have gone extinct over the years, but only a couple have. But other than that, there's really nothing bothering them just because of where they live and in these cave system, and they have plenty of food. So all in all, as a population, they're doing just fine.
Yep. And the biggest thing to worry about with creatures like this is going to be habitat loss is going to be the big one. And then the other big thing will be the food sources dying out. So if a lot of the insects they eat start dying out, then you'll start to see serious number problems with the whip scorpion. But as of right now, because of where they live and what they eat, there isn't really a problem with that at the moment.
And then that wraps up the general info, but we do have a couple of fun facts about them. The first one is that the Mexican tailless whip scorpion was actually in one of the Harry Potter films. It was Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, and that's, I think, why we know the species very well. But there's definitely a scene in the movie, I'm sure all of us can think of it, where they use it to like jump on the heads of a couple of the students, but that is the actual species used in the film.
Yep, it is not a fantastic species as I thought. It was actually a real life species. Then another fun fact we have is that there are more than 155 species of tailless whip scorpions, and as Julia mentioned, there are actually even extinct species that have been discovered through fossilized remains.
Yeah, and going on that, they're believed to be over 358 million years old. So these tailless whip scorpions have been around for a very, very long time.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier, they don't even bite. They make extremely great pets. They don't have any venom glands. They don't have any way to inject anything into you. So you don't really have anything to worry about if you ever come across one. Don't bother it. If you have the opportunity to handle one, whether it be a pet place, at a zoo, a friend may have one. Don't necessarily be afraid to handle them. They are completely harmless, and it can be a very interesting experience to handle a creature like that and be able to experience that sort of thing.
And I think that wraps up everything that we have on the Mexican tailless scorpion. Thank you so much for listening and watching. We really appreciate everything that you guys do, and we hope you find us entertaining with these new videos and stuff. But tune in next time. Well, we'll be talking about the lamprey.